Hello. I think this is me going live, but one never knows until the going live actually happens. Yes, I think it is. Great. I am live. Welcome everybody to the live stream. If you're sitting in Zoom at the moment waiting to be let in, Zoom is only for if you want to ask questions. So only sit in the Zoom waiting room if you want to ask a question. And when I'm ready to take questions, I will allow one person in at a time to ask questions. I'm more serious now on doing security and protecting myself from people being inappropriate. So it means that it's just too complex for me to have lots of people in the Zoom and control it and live stream. So I'll only let someone in when they're going to ask a question. No one can sit in the Zoom and watch. You have to watch on YouTube. If you want to ask questions during my talk, you have to subscribe to my Telegram channel. And the way that you do that is go to my website and the live streaming page, and then you can find out how to subscribe to the Telegram group and ask questions. All of it, though, you have to go through security and prove your true identity. Yes, and advertisements. I have one spot left on the up and coming book club, which starts at the beginning of April, first or second week of April. You can go to my website and book that if you would like to book that. I also have in 3 weeks, just under 3 weeks, a conference in Germany that you're welcome to join. Go to my website, or I think it's up here or up here. You can press in the recorded version somewhere up here, and you'll find out about that. I also have another conference retreat in October in the south of Europe, and it also is walking retreat as well. So you can find out that. Most will be in the box below that you'd have to press in, and you can find out about that. Great. Now we shall begin with the talk. So now I have to remember what the talk title is, and I believe it is How to Deconstruct the Ego. Just let me check that's correct. One moment. How to deconstruct the ego. I got it correct. Yeah. It's great. It's a great difficulty producing a name. If any of you want to suggest names in my question group on Telegram, you're welcome to suggest a name. You might have a question and think that's a good title. Yeah. Another way to ask questions is you can write questions in the question group. You don't have to speak to me in person. Yeah, that's the 2 different ways. It's confusing, and I change all the time my ways of doing it. Yes. Okay, so how to deconstruct the ego. So when I first got into this subject, I was very much like the ego was the devil, and the ego was something that we needed to deconstruct. And then when I met Roger Castillo and Ramesh Balsekar, they spoke about the ego in a positive way, which then made me not mention the word ego in spiritual circles, because I then didn't know how people were using it. And somebody like Nisargadatta Maharaj, and I think even Papaji didn't really mention the ego. So it's like one of these funny words that can either be splattered everywhere in spirituality, not be mentioned, or be talked in the exact opposite way. That's the nature of expressing this subject. Because it's not found in words, then everyone can have different words about it. Yes. So Roger and Ramesh would talk about it as the ego as the habits and the conditions of this body. So the up-to-date conditioning and habits. And everybody has an ego, and you can never get rid of the ego. And enlightenment doesn't mean getting rid of the ego. I can't remember exactly the way they would speak about it, but the way I interpreted it is that, and the way that it's seen here now, is that waking up is the detachment from the ego, or what Roger and Ramesh would call the ego. So it's no longer believing, but it's not even belief, it's an energetic shift that's no longer attaching to the habits and the conditions being the experiencer. So it's no longer this I that is the experiencer of life, this personal I, that is seen as an experience. But if we spoke about the ego in terms of what other people like Eckhart Tolle mean by the ego, I think they mean two things. They mean the same as what Roger and Ramesh meant, the detachment from believing the ego is who you are. And then I think they also mean the breaking down of the complex patterns that happen when you believe you are an ego. So I think it's twofold. It's breaking down of conditioning, and then also breaking down of the one that believes that it is the ego, or that energy which is saying, I am an ego experiencing life. And both are done in a similar manner, it seems. There is a questioning of what is real. There is a questioning of thoughts, imagination, reactivity. Needs, wants, desires, expectation, shame, guilt, the personality, relationships, your beliefs on anything. There is a questioning of that. And through the questioning of that, the person, the ego, becomes more simple. So rather than going into weeks, months, years of hatred against someone, against your job, against a situation, there is a coming back to what you actually feel, which is very vulnerable or insecure. So going below all of those stories and accepting the raw feeling, and then that dropping away faster. So the feeling comes up, and then there's not the attachment and aversion to the feeling. And so that deconstructs the habits and the conditions, but then there is this next thing that happens, where there is the deconstruction of the I, the one that believes it's experiencing life. And that's what I predominantly speak about. In the past, I have spoken more about the habits and the conditions. But now I speak more about just the breaking of that energy which believes it is the experience to life. This is my life. And that is total freedom. That is total destruction of the ego. Total destruction of who you are. Who is it that's experiencing this now? Who is looking out of these eyes? And this is coming back to rest in that. So it's no longer something which is in movement that's experiencing. Who you are is perfectly still, without any quality. You'd say consciousness, but not a personal consciousness. Nisargadatta Maharaj would call it the witness. Sometimes he changes, it seems, the way he speaks, like all of us. But it's not a personal witnessing, it's not a personal consciousness. So what I call personal consciousness is personal awareness. I mean, all teachers call it different things because it's not something that can be talked about. So there is a person with personal awareness that we can see. So that person can move the attention to the chair, to the legs. It can move the attention onto thinking, and it can put the attention in the present moment. But there's something that knows that. There's something that's experiencing that cannot be found, that isn't a thing. That you can't even say is consciousness or the witness, because when it's truly known, it is everywhere, all things and no things simultaneously. So then it comes back to absolute mystery. But in speaking about it, I'm happy to call it the empty looking and the I am. Beingness. And when I speak about beingness or the I am, I'm not talking about something which can be experienced as such. Because there's a feeling of beingness, there's the sensation of being alive. And this is beyond that too. And it's love, but without being a feeling. It's absolute home, but without being a feeling of home. 'Cause, 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 But all these things come with great complexity to speak about. And the most important part is the resonance. There can be a knowing of what's being spoken about. And this is the most important part of what I personally teach. And other things that other people teach, it's not saying the mind's higher or lower, because all other things like clarity or meditation or understanding the ego are really helpful in the deconstruction of who you are. But in the end, all of that vanishes and we're left without any words of someone being deconstructed, someone doing something, someone arriving somewhere, someone getting anything. And we're just here. And it cannot be said that someone awoke or someone didn't awake. It cannot be said someone is a doer or someone isn't a doer. Someone's watching or someone isn't watching. Here is total innocence. All labels and words and naming belong to time, and time appears here, but it's seen as a phenomena that's appearing and disappearing and not a reality. Reality is stillness. Everything else is illusory. It comes and goes. And that stillness is everything. So you could say that everything's real and unreal, but not like you imagine it. So like the table now that's in front of me, we could say that that's real and unreal. It's happening and it's not happening. But we could also say it's illusion because we're naming it a table. We're also seeing it in a particular way, which gives it the shape and form of a table. But if we had different eyes or different senses, we might see it in a different way and it therefore wouldn't be a table. So it's illusion like that as well. Our brain, our interpretation is making it a thing, an apparent thing. So everything is real and unreal, but that table is not a table, no matter what. It's only something that we're naming as a table. Another way of saying it is we could say there is presence happening. It's a live presence. So if you want to know a how-to, then this would be my advice. But please know that this advice isn't actually saying that there is somebody there that could do it. It will either happen or not. So there is a speaking of something, and then it will happen there, and the outcome of it is unknown. So the advice here would be to present oneself to the message of non-duality, investigate the illusory nature of thinking, investigate subject-object, and most people's predisposition that there is an I that's experiencing this. Do therapies to help release the energies from physical therapies to help release the energy from your body, and put the attention back in presence, back in I am, back in the empty looking, knowing that there isn't doership, so that either happens or not, and that there isn't somebody that will arrive there. So even though I'm suggesting all these things, the fundamental breakdown will be the one that believes it's going to arrive. I'm going to do all these things that Lisa says and arrive at peace. Who? Who will arrive? Who is experiencing right now? I don't know if I've got much more to say on the matter. So if you want to ask questions, you can do in the Telegram group. You can write a question. If you want to speak to me in Zoom, then you can do by just joining the waiting room, and then I will let you in. Yeah, and even though I would love to intuitively and psychically know when people are crossing their boundaries and not, I do not know this. I can sense it sometimes. So when you're asking question, check in with yourself. Are you overexposing yourself? Are you being too vulnerable? Be clear about what it is that you want to ask and what it is you want to get from that interaction. And you're welcome in the Telegram group to change your name in Telegram, but you can't change your Telegram ID. that's needed for the media to be able to identify who you are. And in the Zoom meeting, I will try my best to keep your name and video from going online. I've got it in focus mode, and I will pin my video. So I think that means that you won't be broadcast, just your voice will be broadcasted. But it's hard, these things, you know, it might be that your name goes on. You can change your name in Zoom so it doesn't go on. I think if you keep your video off, your video definitely won't go on. So you just got to make sure your video is turned off when you speak with me. Yeah. So, and it's not easy for me to go back and edit the videos and edit you out of the videos if you get a vulnerability hangover after you've shared. Takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and I just don't have that human power to do that. You know, like all of us, I have a certain amount of jobs I can do in a day, and I have somebody that supports me as well. But there's, you know, it just it's yeah, a lot of work for me to do. Sometimes it's easier if it's right at the very end, and then I can just take it off. I mean, that's not easy, but it's easier. Yeah. So please make sure that you keep all this in mind, that this is going on YouTube. That's the point of these talks. Yeah. So you can change your name in Telegram, not your Telegram ID. I'll only read out your name. And in the Zoom meeting, hopefully not your name or your video won't be shown, but I've given permission so you can change your name, and the names are off, and I've focused it on me, so it should be no name, just your audio in the Zoom. Yeah. So if you want to ask a question live, then go into the Zoom waiting room. I will let you in one by one. Thank you. Okay, this is from TK. Hello, TK. Thank you for your question. Recently, I was badly screwed and find myself swinging between outrage that someone I trusted could betray me and the belief that he is just another human with no control of what he does. The outrage demands reparation. Reparation. Sorry, I can't read that word. Though not revenge. So retaliation, that's the kind of like idea that I get from that word. The outrage demands retaliation, though not revenge, while the belief makes no demands at all. I never land on one or the other for long and don't know how the story will end. If I really knew I was not running the show, could I still feel outrage? Would love to hear your thoughts. T. I mean, I don't know what your personal interpretation of outrage is. To me, the one feeling that I'm pretty sure after 12 years left was hatred. So there's no hatred that appears. So that's really like, what is hatred? It's a really big word. So then I don't know if the outrage contains hatred, then most probably it's a seeking dynamic. If it doesn't, then it could just be shock. Like, it's shocking when someone you trust really screws you over. I'm sure all of us have been in that position when you find out someone you really, really trusted. I has been lying or taken advantage. It's a very painful experience. You know, so much of our storytelling is about this. It's a very strong experience. But what's interesting, TK, is why are you thinking about whether this response makes you free or not? Like, that's not the interesting exploration in this. The interesting exploration is what is happening there. You know, what's the feeling? And who is the feeling belonging to? That is the interesting part. So who is it that's experiencing that? So in the moment, there is seeing happening. There is hearing happening. There is feeling happening. But it's not happening for anyone. There's not anyone that this is happening for. So there could be upset happening, vulnerability happening, but it's not happening for anybody. It's happening in total freedom. The mind can often come in and say, if I do something about him, if I get him to apologize or see his mistakes, then I will be free, or then I can relax, or then I will be safe. And that's not true. That's true maybe on a relative level. Like if he's screwing you over with your business, if you can help him to understand why that's a disaster for everyone, then it could save the business. But on the absolute level, it's not true. Life comes and goes and comes and goes and comes and goes. Something else will happen, then something else. The freedom that we all seek is always this moment. It's always what's happening. It's always this sense of presence, this empty looking. It's so radically different from what society has taught you, where freedom is in time. Dear Lisa, I have heard the saying that cats are like Zen masters in a way, and one may learn from watching animals in general to become present. Is there a difference between the awareness of an animal compared to a human awakening, an awakened human being. Sincerely, G. Yeah, the difference is that animals don't identify. So an awakening being has identified and then gone back to being unidentified with a character and complex thinking. So an animal doesn't have a character as such, what we call a character, or an ego, Ramesh and Roger would say. So if we take Khaleesi, my dog, for example, she has a character that we can see. So I can label her character. She's spicy, she's confident, she's determined, she's sassy, she's possessive. So I can label these things. And to humans, this makes a character in our brain. And then you can watch her, and then there can be a determination of a character to you. And then it gives a you and I reference point. So we've got a reference point for Khaleesi and then a reference point for me. And that's not unenlightened as such. The unenlightened part, or the suffering part, is the identification with the me. But we have this ability to see apparent time. We've made up time, so then we can kind of see characters in time. Whereas Khaleesi cannot see a character of Lisa. She doesn't have this complex experience of me. So she comes to rely on a predictable pattern of Lisa. So she learns a predictable pattern, but it's not made into a character. In every moment, who I am to her is innocence, is no thing. She's just experiencing me. So she's never had this ability to say, I'm Khaleesi with these pointy ears and black hair and gorgeous eyes and sassy personality, and I'm relating to Elisa. She doesn't have that complex thinking. She doesn't know when she looks down at her paw that that's her paw and that she is something inside a body experiencing that paw. She doesn't have that sense. So there is just everything. But with the human, when they have their awakening, as they've gone through this complex thinking where we can determine time, where we can have these complex emotions based in time, so we can have grief and sadness and healthy relationships and all these types of things that come with knowing complex timeline. We can recondition ourselves. We can understand difficult behavior and recondition it. Khaleesi can't reflect on that. We can appreciate a sunset. Khaleesi cannot. She doesn't know the difference between a good sunset, a bad sunset, a beautiful sunset, an ugly sunset. It's just what's happening. So the human then goes through this release of the subject. So they go back to who they are. So Khaleesi, this beingness, like seeing everything as nothing and emptiness, but yet with this complex character that arises in it. But there isn't then the identification with the character. I'm sure if Khaleesi got injected with complex thinking, that the energy would be to identify with it. It'd be the nature if it was injected into any species. So it's like phenomenal that we can do that. So we can have this character appear. We can see this apparent character. We can see this apparent life of Lisa. Khaleesi can't see her life. Then there can be a disidentification with us and knowing that that was never who we were, that that's an appearance that arises with this body that's beautiful, that helps us have complex relationships, live in a complex society, and see a time-bound reality which helps us survive. And have like mobile phones and computers and indoor plants and gardens and houses, all these really complex things. It's really phenomenal. And then there can be this disidentification with it, which I call is the lack of the end of suffering. So there's no longer seen as you. When it's seen as you, then there's all these complications that happen. This really complex stream of thoughts, like octopus tentacles arise, and they go out like fractals infinitely, where, you know, someone screws us over, and then there can be a whole lifetime that is spent caught in the agony of that and all the imagining of that. Whereas someone screws Khaleesi over and she can't remember it. She's upset in the moment, and then it's gone. But that's not the enlightened way to be like Khaleesi. The enlightened way is to be able to see that and then disidentifying and knowing that's not who you are, knowing that's not who the other person is, but still engaging in the character so you don't let it happen again. You avoid that. You can feel the feelings, but you don't avoid it like a seeking avoidance, but you set up protections in order to stop that person repeating that again and again and again. So that's the difference. It's a huge difference and a very small difference. When I look into Khaleesi's eyes, it's emptiness looking at emptiness. I love it. When I look at an animal's eyes, it's like just emptiness looking. But when a human awakes, it's a phenomenal awakening, because to come out of that hallucination of you as a character being an experiencer is magnanimous. It's almighty. You are not a character experiencing this life. Your character is an experience. Who you are is love, is freedom, is expansion. Yes. Hi, Lisa. How are you? Question. What do you think apparently happens when the body apparently dies? Dubious speculation is most welcome. Thank you. Dubious speculation. Well, I think that there's absolute release and freedom that happens. So in Buddhism, they call it nirvana, but it's a bit more complicated. In that nirvana, it's like you aren't reborn again. So there's a possibility, if you haven't got to nirvana, the energy gets reborn again. But in the moment of whether or not you get reborn or not, that's another thing that we can speak about. But in the moment of death, when death begins to happen to the body, there might be fear that arises initially, but then at some point, there will be a merging with love. There will be a letting go of the character, not being able to remember the character. And then you'll begin to dissolve back into the love of what you are for everybody. And that's for everybody. The murderers, the con artists, the narcissists, the saints, the heroes, the lovers, everybody. Nobody gets more of that. Then we can go on to speak about rebirth. So I came from Buddhist tradition, so I don't know, I think that this idea is quite plausible, is that the energy of the body, so if there's still desire left in the body, seeking left in the body, then that energy will be reborn again. I don't know. So in Buddhism, the highest enlightenment is when you don't get reborn again. But for the first part of what I answered, I'm pretty sure that's what happens. like almost convinced, like almost without any doubt. The only reason that I have a certain amount of doubt, which is incredibly small and minuscule, is because I don't I always think it's great to stay open-minded. The reason though that I feel like that's what happens when you die is I feel like I've died so many times in this life, or maybe in last lives as well. I feel like I know death intimately. Like it's the same thing. If you die spiritually, it's like a letting go of this body and then a dissolving into this oceanic bliss that has no reference point. Yes, Lisa. One follow-up question. Do you have any fear around physical death? Um, it's complex because I wouldn't say that I have fear around physical death as such, but yet if physical death is presented, then there is fear that arises. That's a weird contradiction or sounding contradiction. So it's like if I'm presented with danger to the body, then fear arises. But I wouldn't say that I've got fear around dying. I feel like it's absolute freedom. So I feel like the fear around death is a physiological response, and it doesn't really bother me. It doesn't mean that I'm afraid of death because it's not me or mine. It's just a physical, logical response the body has. Like I know what death is, so strong here. Like I know what death is, and it's absolute love. It's not being abandoned. It's not being left alone. There's also sadness that can arise. You know, like because we've got this character in this time-bound thing, there's a sadness about the ending of that apparent time-bound character and relationships. Sort of, but I don't think about it very often. But if I were to think about it, or if I were to experience someone around me dying or something, there is a sadness that comes around the end. But it's also beautiful as well. Like I see the expansion. You know, I know that they're going to absolute freedom. And I know that if things didn't die, then everything would be real. Like that death is imperative for existence. You know, death is the other half of existence. Like death and life exist simultaneously. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe I speak about this. So currently, Felicie, my dog, is very unwell. We've been together for 12 years. And because she's a feral dog from the streets, and she has a tendency to be aggressive when she's nervous. And because of that, it means that we spent very little time apart the last 12 years because I can't really leave her with people, or I have to take her everywhere with me. So she comes on retreats. Yeah, if I go away, she comes. We kind of, for 12 years, there's been this intimacy. It's very intimate having a pet, even though people are like, oh, it's only a pet. But it's intimate because you spend so much time together, maybe more than you do with other humans, even your partner, because they follow you around all the time. Yeah. And so yesterday, there's been a descent into her being quite ill quite quickly. I mean, she's been ill for a year or two, but there's been another onset of it. And yesterday, there was grief that came up around it, or sadness that came up around it. Because it's so, I mean, it's like bittersweet. It's so beautiful and sad to me. Like there's this character, these two characters that have been together, and then this will go, and this will not repeat itself. That's the seeming end of something, seeming end of these two formations coming together like that. I mean, there are infinite possibilities of everything that can happen, so we put that aside. But in this seeming world, that's the end of something. And and the fact that as a human I can envision and memorize like this time that we spent together, that is really beautiful. And there's great love for it, and this is part of being human, that we can have these intimate relationships. And for that to exist, it means that there has to always be change. So in order for this to have had the experience of having Khaleesi in her particular form and being an owner of a dog, or her an owner of a human, there has to be death, because there has to be change. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible for this life to happen. And everything would be fixed, everything would be still, like everything, it wouldn't function. So there has to be this constant change that is happening. And in a way, like the bodies and the stories of us have always been changing. So it's a complex thing. But anyway, stay with me. So there's this, on the human level, there's this sadness about this relationship dispersing, and this compassion as well. That compassion for her, because there's pain arising for her. But there's also this beauty to it. This is what allows love. Not that somebody's going to die, that's not what allows love. But what allows love is the fact that nothing's permanent. I can't get there in words. So if you look at a kaleidoscope, you only get to see the beauty of it by the movement. You move it, and then you get to appreciate all the different angles and the different colors mixing and merging together, and then it moves again. If it never moved, nothing would be happening. you wouldn't be able to experience anything. The movement is a prerequisite for this. But in order for everything to move, it means that you will lose everything, including yourself, because that's the nature of it. In order to appreciate a kaleidoscope, you have to accept the change. If you don't want things to change, then you will only have one picture, and by only having one picture, you won't know its existence. It's the exquisiteness of this life. It's the love of this life. And us as humans have this ability to travel along together and appreciate and have memories and have a sense of these characters. Khaleesi can't sense my character. So these sense of these characters, even though we're not really seeing that character, you know, it's part of our imagination, we have a sense of it. And that's really, so grief and sadness is like this bittersweet thing. In order to experience this, everything has to be constantly changing. So it's like, to experience this, you have to constantly be giving everything back to God. That's the deal. That's the deal. Otherwise, nothing is happening. And so that's why I cry. I cry because of that beautifully sad dance, for loving everything that appears so radically, and then also that's the beauty of this. Being ourselves. It's the most exquisite dance. Everything, every part of this. So it's like those tears were sad and beautiful simultaneously. You know, they say the highest form of art, I don't know how true this is, just I've read it in quotes. They say the highest form of art, sorry, the highest form of art is to be able to capture that bittersweetness of life. Sorry. Now we have to do the honk, honk. Just one honk. Okay, so some people have entered the waiting room. So I'm just going to let in the first person, but I'm only letting people in that want to ask questions. So if you don't want to ask a question live, then you can leave. Yes, and I'm also not going to, yeah. So just as a, okay. I'm just going to omit David. So I'm assuming, David, that you want to ask a question. And David, I think your name is being displayed. I don't know why that is. So I hope that your name is not being showed, David. But it might be, video is not. But yes, you can unmute yourself, David, and ask your question. Yeah, so I'm asking you to unmute yourself. Yeah, hey.
Hi, Lisa.
Hey, did you want to ask a question?
Um, Actually, I just got on and wasn't prepared to ask a question.
Oh, okay. You can watch them through YouTube. That's
Through
okay.
the YouTube. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Oh, did you want to ask a question? Why is that doing that? So, one moment. Okay. So, I can't read your name, but yes, you are welcome to unmute yourself, who is in C. I just call you C. Hello. Did you have a question?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. Just can I just put you in speaker because your audio is not great. 1 second.
Is it better?
Oh. Okay. No, that's not going to work. I don't know what's happening there. Okay. I think I'm connecting to my partner's phone. Okay. So we'll just try with this video. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I was just trying to get into the meeting instead of ask a question.
You don't want to ask a question?
Well, I can ask a question.
No, it's not. If you want to just watch the video, then you can do that through YouTube. This is just for asking questions, the Zoom.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's a bit confusing because no one's used to this way of doing it. So if you want to ask a question and speak to me, then you can do by going into the Zoom waiting room. And if you want to watch it, then you can watch it on YouTube. Okay. So Yes, thank you very much for your response. Yes, any fears seems like an evolutionary bias to stay alive. L question, how do I recognize that seeking has stopped? It's to do with seeking. But the question to ask is, who cares? So what changes is the seeking to find relief in the next moment, which is an energy in the body. And this I that believes life is happening to me. But who is the one that cares if the seeking has stopped or not? Like, it's normally another identity that wants to be held up. Like, to know where it is. Whereas you're nowhere, like who you truly are is nowhere. Is not a thing. Is not somebody that's awakened or not awakened, seeking or not seeking. Yeah. Question 2. The internal guru, a gradual development or always available from first awareness of it, which was as a young teenager here. Oh, sorry. Is the internal guru a gradual development or always available from first awareness of it? I don't know about these things named internal guru or these types of namings of things. It might be that I speak about it, but just in a different way. But to me, the way to live life is to be on the precipice between nothing and everything. So it's between these two places, an action to come from that place between nothing and everything. When you're seeking, it kind of comes from this. It's like, here's the nothing is the backside and the everything. And then it's like to stand in between them, and then the action arises from that. And when you kind of are seeking and identified, you're kind of coming from this ethereal, made up character that's very mental and based in ideas of what you think should and shouldn't be. Thinking is great, and thinking is not the enemy. It's an amazing mechanism to update the system. But most of us live in the thinking as if it is us. Whereas where you want to be in every moment is the place between nothing and everything. And then thinking can appear from that. Contemplating decisions can appear from that. Contemplating spirituality can appear from that. But not this kind of like living up in this imagined you and then doing it all through this imagined you that's going through time, like you're watching yourself and you're removed from this moment, you're removed from this emptiness and this fullness. So yeah, I don't know, eternal guru, I might not really use that word, but it's like coming back to this moment. This moment includes thinking, includes contemplation, it includes the ability to think in time. So it's not like becoming brain dead, but it's not living through this imagined you that goes into this like massive nuclear bubble. You know, the nuclear bombs, they're this big mushroom head. It's like, you're kind of living up there rather than down at the very base. But hey, Lisa, happy to ask a question in Zoom if no one else does. Yes. Okay, just come back to that, but if you do ask a question in Zoom, it's just becoming really conscious of what you're asking, because I don't know if you caught this earlier, and it's not a criticism or anything, but it's just being really aware that it's being recorded and then being able to censor yourself. So, you know, you don't overexpose, you're not too vulnerable. And this isn't particularly talking about you, it's to everybody. So if you do share, it's just becoming aware of that. Okay, S. Thank you very much for your beautiful, honest response. I get you, I think. Creation destructions are two parts of the same impermanent coin, so to speak. One more follow-up cue. Question. Could expand on what you mean by giving everything back to God? Sorry to hear about Khaleesi's health decline. I love dogs. Very sad when my old doggy Zed passed away. Sending her and you well wishes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to describe that better, like giving everything back to God. I suppose it's kind of like non-attachment, like not attaching to anything. Like this free flow. That doesn't mean the absence of sadness. It's even the non-attachment to the one that believes it's the absence of an emotion. Yeah. But giving it back to God is like a beautiful way to say it. You give everything back to God. Contentment and joy is the default feeling now. That is most of the time when emotions pass through. But I still feel like I separate myself almost all the time. Does this mean seeking is still present? I don't know. It's just, who knows what you mean by all the words? You separate yourself. You're watching yourself do things. I don't like to diagnose and analyze and say, yes, this is still present or that's still present. But this is like an absolute intimacy with everything. Just, this is it. A deep knowing this is it. And then in that, the mind thinks, the emotions come. And this is free. This is always free. How do you relate to the shitty part of yourself that you keep hidden? You mean the shadow side? So somebody could take that personally and be like, oh, you've seen a shitty thing in that speaker, like meaning me, like the shitty thing that you have kept inside. Yeah, that's complex because I don't experience hatred for people anymore. So I don't actually feel ill will to people. So like when I was releasing and when I was doing like shadow work when I was younger and stuff and going through like this massive process, there was like loads of shadow stuff that I came across that were mostly based on hatred towards people. But I'm not saying that I'm not an animal. Like I am an animal. Like, but I don't see that as shitty. Like I'm aware that you know, that for survival, there has to be the consumption of other things for survival. So I'm aware of the capabilities in that regard, you know, to what this is. But I don't have like, I don't feel like, I mean, one never knows what monsters are going to pop up. But I don't feel like I have hatred towards people anymore. So I genuinely feel goodwill towards humans, even when they really freaking awful. There can be annoyance and anger towards them, but it doesn't come with a hatred anymore. So, yeah, so that kind of, but before, when I did feel hatred for people, it was like there was like a malevolence there that sort of got in the shadow. And if people didn't do what I wanted or didn't give me what I wanted, then there was this like hidden like, yeah. But it doesn't mean that I can't do shitty things, because I can, and I can act inappropriately, but it doesn't come from like a devil inside anymore. Or, you know, like, it's not that I had a devil, but you know, like this shadow, this lurking shadow that's repressed. It's more through like laziness or ignorance or yeah, I might be like really missing something in that question. So that's the answer to that. So whatever you call it, to me, shadow means that which keeps hidden because you are not proud of it. Do you have stuff like that? I mean, obviously there's stuff that I don't share, you know, about my past or about like things that aren't appropriate to talk about in society, which could endanger me or bring me difficulty, you know, on the internet. So, but I don't know if I feel deeply ashamed of it. The only feeling that I would have is that because people are in a very narrow mindset, most people, most probably not people that are listening here, but a lot of people in our society are in a very narrow mindset, is if they found out how open I am about everything, and yeah, my views or something on everything, they would maybe kill me. Like something like that. Like I can't really talk about it because I don't want to, you know, the only things that I can really think of really is stuff that could endanger me if I said it on YouTube. But if it was like a closed room of 10 people where it wasn't being recorded, I have absolutely no shame about talking about these things, I don't think. I don't know if I feel shame here either. It's more just that I have to look after myself being a public speaker on the internet. Yeah. Because we live in a society that, yeah. So I don't know if we can speak about this. What about being scared of being alone or not part of any community? Yeah, these are complex questions because I don't know if I feel these things. I do feel them to some extent. Like if I'm totally abandoned by society, then I'm most probably going to die. Like we're dependent on a society to be able to trade, to survive. So I do feel it like that. But I don't, you know, like a lot of things change, and I don't think it's as simple as that. And so I don't think trying to pin me on these questions is very helpful, because yeah, things changed and I had that shift. So what I would say is, you know, rather than looking at me and what I do or don't experience, look to why you're asking the question. Like, is it making, like, you trying to understand yourself by understanding me? Or understanding like expectations, like, will I get rid of these feelings if I carry on down this path? So, because it's too hard for me to answer these personal questions. One, because I have to protect my own safety on YouTube. And two, because it's not as black and white and simple as like just answering these things. Like, yeah. Yeah. So maybe get more clear in yourself, and then stop asking me about my personal stuff, because that's like, it's murky. I'm very interested in what it is like to be Lisa. I think that that's maybe a simplistic interpretation of what you're experiencing. Like, if you went deeper into that, there's most probably a greater depth behind the question. Like, that's just a sort of throwaway thing we'd say, like, I'm very interested in knowing what it's like to be Lisa, in order to avoid our own vulnerability of what we're actually feeling. Your personal stuff is what is interesting. No, I think that that's very superficial. I don't think that's your truth. It could be. Who am I to say? You could go for what you feel and what feels right for you. But I'm just saying, maybe there's a deeper, something deeper there. Okay. Yeah, so the person that's asking, I'm trying not to say your name, to go on the internet, maybe you can change your Zoom name just in case it does. Just in case. Are you continuously, unavoidably noticing that God is aware through your senses and not Lisa? Stop now. Not me, not Lisa. Lisa isn't aware of that. Lisa cannot be aware of that. But there was a shift that happened where it wasn't Lisa looking anymore. Lisa was an experience. So it's not me as a character that is aware. The character is something that's experienced. So the character never has an awakening, ever. Character seems to have awakenings, but what shifts is this energy from being the person that's experiencing to this nothingness that's experiencing, which has always been there, always been free, always been expanded, and always in absolute love. Last questions. Apologies for being that person in the group that keeps asking questions. From a non-duality point of view, do you think archetypes like God, Satan, or demons and angels are metaphorical or apparently as real as everything else in the world? I think that from a non-duality perspective, that whole question is void. Like whether they're real or unreal in this world, from a non-dual point of view, it's absolutely irrelevant what appears in the dream. Like what's being spoken about is that which is beyond the dream. That which is in total stillness and silence, while the dream is moving and in flow. It's absolute freedom. So it doesn't matter about these things. They're metaphorical or not metaphorical. They're archetypes or not archetypes. What matters is what's always here. Right here. Right here. This is freedom. This is freedom. This is. This is. Sure is. Thank you for making my Sunday happier. Thank you. Ooh. Oh, my tissues. I can notice that I'm sliding more and more down the screen. Does this freedom, stillness, silent awareness continue after the body drops? Not the personal awareness, but the big consciousness, which is no thing and all things. Thank you. I feel a resonance from you that feels like a silencing. Yeah, nice. What's so beautiful about this is that maybe there's a feeling of resonance when listening to me speak, but it can only be the silence of everything. So what's waking up is the silence of everything. So Lisa, the character, is absolutely out of the picture. It's just seemingly that Lisa speaks, and then that resonance happens, and then there is the silence of everything becoming present. I experience myself as nothingness and have an intuition of everything you speak of. Is there anything else that can be seen to know myself as that? It's not something that you need to see or that you need to get. In the apparent process, the person needs to seemingly get things and understand things and let go of things and release things. But then it then becomes not about you. What is there without any effort from you? What is here always and has nothing to do with the character, with doing, with getting, with achieving, with having. It's just here experiencing. And if anything, the person can move its attention to the present moment, and then there is a relaxation that can happen. So if there's practice that wants to be done, then that's something that can be done, is putting the attention, the personal awareness in the personal awareness, or in the I am, or the empty looking. But it's really this energetic movement to that which is perfectly still now, that which is experiencing, that's asking for nothing, wanting nothing, needing nothing. It's not about the character becoming this or that. Seemingly there is a process of the character detoxifying and decomplicating, but then that's let go. And it's no longer about the improvement of the character becoming. It's something much deeper, a movement away from that character. A seeing that in the appearance of things, in the movement of things, you will never find it. You will never find it in right action, in feeling a certain feeling, in having a certain emotion. There is something else that's never moved. That is where home is. That's been there in every experience and will be there after death and was there before birth. Will the energetic shift that not Lisa sees everything through continue when the body drops? Or does that shift awareness require a body brain to see through? The not seeing Lisa is there always. It is absolutely timeless. Life and death is in the human world. Before and after is in the human world. What remains is what always is. So who you truly are cannot be born, cannot die, cannot have afterlife, cannot be reborn. It is just here and present, experiencing absolute mystery. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think BC, before Christ, BC, I think I got to end now, so I won't take a spoken question. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I so appreciate sharing with everybody and your questions and this, open community that's interested in truth. It's so rare to be and experience other humans that want to get to the source of things. And sometimes, like every community, the non-dual community can be a bit rough around the edges. And there's issues and there's problems in it. And there's, the abuse of the gurus and this problem and that problem. But then if we step back from all the problems that we can see, there is this amazing community worldwide of people that want to see beyond the illusion. And that's really spectacular. Respect to every person that has asked questions in this group. Like, just so much respect to you. Even though it's an absolutely impersonal thing, it's seemingly the person that starts this voyage to deconstruct themselves. So, you see, so all the people that are in the Telegram group, you see your names and maybe there's a feeling of competition or not feeling good enough or feeling better than or judgments or all these types of things. But then if you look through your other eyes, just see the pearls. Like every person in this group is prepared to ask the question of who am I? And that's really a phenomenal thing, which I bow to, like just really bow to. What courage, what grace, what beauty. So, there's all types of competition and aggression that can happen on this path. But if just for a moment there's a dropping of that and looking around at all these other seekers that are brave enough to ask, who am I? And just really, really loving them and supporting them. Yeah. Don't know where that came from. Oh, nothing. It came from nothing. Yeah. Yeah, so thank you, everybody. I really, 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 really wish you everything. Every goddamn thing.